All right, welcome everyone to this week's meeting of the Clyde Sukeforth chapter of SABR. I am Bruce McClure, the chapter chair, and we always hold our meetings in conjunction with the Gardner-Waterman chapter of SABR in Vermont, Dr. Clayton Truder, chair. And before we get started, I was hoping to see some of my podcaster friends in the crowd tonight, but I don't see any of them. Jeff, where are you? So this afternoon, the Baseball Hall of Fame came out with their classic baseball era ballot. 8 players have been placed on it, including the holdover that you see in the top left, Dick Allen. Ken Boyer, Josh Donaldson, Steve Garvey, Vic Harris, Tommy John, Dave Parker, and Louis Tiant are all eligible for the Baseball Hall of Fame through the Classic Era Committee, and their vote will be announced on December 8th at 7:30 p.m. I'm going to try to hold a impromptu meeting so we can discuss that ballot that night, but we're also going to hold our own ballot. Watch for that coming out next Monday in the Monday Message. All right, on to our feature presentation. Do managers have an effect on the success of pitchers? A straightforward way to investigate this question is by comparing a pitcher's record under a specific manager with his record under others. This presentation uses the method to examine the intersection of Ron Guidry and Billy Martin. In Martin's on and off tenure at the helm of the Yankees, he ran the club during all 3 of Guidry's 20-win seasons. Well, 94 games in 78, all of 83, and most of 85. In addition to Retrosheet game reports, tonight we will examine the words of Guidry's pitching coaches and catchers, and perhaps Louisiana Lightning himself. A SABR member and Northwest chapter member since 2002, Rick Solomon served as chapter president for 4 years. He practiced personal injury law for 40 years in the Seattle area and was a 3-time president of the Puget Sound Civil War Roundtable and a member of the board of directors of the Buffalo Soldier Museum in Tacoma, Washington. He lives in Seattle with his 2 cats, Peyton Manning and Buster Posey, and is working on a historical fiction novel in which Jerry Garcia and Yogi Berra have adventures together. What? Rick Solomon! Welcome to Northern New England, my friend. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
All right.
Doing tonight?
Looks like we got a good crew for you tonight, so we're going to let you get started. You can go down the bottom and hit that share button, and we'll coach you through it to get you going. How's that?
Okay.
Rick is not the most tech-savvy guy. I hope he doesn't mind me saying that, so we're going to give him some grace and patience.
No, I don't mind. And is my first slide coming through?
So,
Rick,
share. Go ahead, Molly.
So we're going down to the bottom of the Zoom screen, hitting that green button, screen share.
Yes.
And then we're going to click on the PowerPoint presentation, and then you're going to hit share. You got it now. You're all set, Rick.
There you go. That's perfect.
The only problem is I can't see my additional slides.
That's okay. I think if you just click in the slide, you should be able to move along.
Okay. So a little bit of background on me. I grew up in northeastern New Jersey as a Yankee fan. However, unlike a lot of Yankee fans, I never had the animus versus Red Sox fans. I guess I first got interested in baseball when about the 1960 World Series that the Yankees lost. And eventually I became a big fan of Mel Stottlemyre and then later Ron Guidry. They're my all-time 2 favorite pitchers. I was fortunate enough to have a friendship with Mel Stottlemyre. I brought him in one time to talk to our chapter, and the day after Yogi Berra died, he and I had about a 15-minute phone conversation. But I also loved Ron Guidry. Ron Guidry had pitched for the Yankees for 14 seasons, 1975 through 1988. And by coincidence, those were the exact same seasons that Billy Martin was the Yankee manager on and off. As many of you probably know, Billy Martin was manager of the Yankees 5 times. But Ron Guidry, he actually joined the Yankees about 5 days. He was brought up to the majors 5 days before Billy was hired as manager. Ron's first 2 appearances were under Bill Verdon, and then Verdon got fired and Martin got hired to manage the Yankees in August of 75. But it struck me as interesting, as Bruce mentioned earlier in the introduction, that Ron Guidry had 3 20-win seasons. In those 20-win seasons, 1978, 94 of the games, Martin was the manager. In 1983, Martin managed the team the entire time. And then in 1985, Yogi Berra got fired as manager after 14 games and Billy took over. And all 3 of those seasons, Ron won 20 games. And it struck me as curious. I wondered, did Ron Guidry have a better record under Billy Martin as opposed to all the rest of his managers? And I should mention Ron Guidry only pitched in the majors for the New York Yankees. So what I did was I looked at Billy Martin's managerial record, and there were only, in that 14-year period of time, there were only 3 seasons that Billy Martin managed the Yankees the entire season. That was 1976, 1977, and 1983. So I knew what Guidry's stats were under Martin those years, since he managed the whole year. Then I subtracted out from, and I should advance the slide here. Let's see. That's not advancing.
I believe if you go down to the bottom left,
Yes.
there should be a little arrow down there somewhere.
Well, I don't see one. I see one that says share. Yes.
Hold on. Let me just jump in. You opened up the toolbar and it says next. That's all you have to hit on.
I don't
top one in the middle.
I don't see a toolbar.
It's a drop down one that's in the middle of the screen, right on your picture. Yep, you were just on it.
I can't see
Go
it.
to the right. You can't see that toolbar?
Nope, because the bar that's about the screen shares there. Maybe I should drag that up.
Yeah, try and drag that up.
No,
there you go.
Toolbar, no.
Now, on the bottom left, there are some very faint buttons.
I don't see them at all.
It's hard to see. Yeah,
I don't see them at all.
Hang in, folks.
It's in the orange horizontal bar on the left-hand side. You're just above them.
I see a slight orange bar. Oh, okay. Okay, does everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a slide of Ron Guidry's entire record. Pretty good record. So what I did was I made 2 columns, one which I took when he pitched under Guidry, under Martin, and the other when he pitched under anyone else. So what I had to do was I had to go into Retrosheet or Baseball Reference. It's really the same for purposes of this. And as everyone knows, let me try to advance the slide again. Boy. So everyone knows George Steinbrenner was the owner of the Yankees, and in a 19-year period, Steinbrenner changed managers 19 times. Billy was 5 times. There was a couple of times Gene Michael was manager, a couple of times Bob Lemon was manager, a couple of times Lou Piniella was manager. Now, I grew up as a Yankee fan, but after a while, I found all these managerial changes to be ridiculous. So there were years where Billy did not manage the Yankees at all in that 14-year period of Guidry's career. That was 1980, 81, 82. That's when Billy was managing the Oakland A's. In 1984, I think he was in between Billy 3 and Billy 4. I think he was special assistant to Steinbrenner. And then in 86 and 87, Lou Piniella was manager for the entire years. So I had to go to 5 other seasons where Billy Martin was partial manager. And that was 1975, 78, 79, 85, and 88. And what I did was I went into Baseball Reference each season and looked game by game for when Guidry pitched. Oops. Did this skip a whole bunch?
It's okay. You can just hit the arrow back button.
Going back here. Okay. Not these arrows. So I carefully went through those and I added up a column of, I knew the dates that Martin was fired and when he was hired. And here's whoops. And Billy was, of course, very argumentative quite a bit. Everyone sees that. And now do you see my slide with his statistics?
We sure do.
Okay. So I want to highlight some things here. About 3/7 of the fifth item down, innings pitched, about 3/7 of Guidry's total innings were under Martin. Okay. You look at the one loss, 84 and 26 under Martin. That's an incredible winning percentage, over 76%. Under all others, 86 and 65, that's about 57%. You can see the difference in ERA. Another real striking one is complete games and shutouts. 44% of Guidry starts under Martin were complete games, whereas under everyone else, his complete games were under 20%. Same thing with shutouts. About 11% of Guidry's starts were shutouts under Martin. Under all other managers, it was slightly less than 6%. So when I interviewed a bunch of people about this difference in the stats that you're seeing here, the common response was, wow, that's a big difference. So as striking as this difference is, I didn't want this presentation to be just these numbers. I want to dig in possible reasons why Guidry had such a much better record under Billy Martin than under all his other Yankee managers. So I know the introduction says stuff about catchers and pitching coaches, but I really didn't want to go into the catchers and the pitching coaches because when I read this book, I have this book in my personal library, Damn Yankees. It came out about 30 years ago by a couple of baseball writers, beat writers who cover the Yankees. and they were excuse me, Bill Madden and Moss Klein. And in that book, they have in the appendix that Guidry pitched to 25 different catchers during his Yankee tenure. And there were something like 11 different pitching coaches, though these pitching coaches served as pitching coaches multiple times. I just didn't think it was a big sample size to do a comparison. So I decided the best thing for me to do is to talk to some players who were with the Yankees most or all of Guidry's career. And the three players that I targeted to talk to were Lou Piniella, Willie Randolph, and Ron Guidry himself. Well, Lou Piniella, he was with the Yankees before Guidry was brought up to the majors for the first time. And he was either a player, a coach, a manager, or a general manager during Guidry's entire time with the Yankees. So I tried to get a hold of Lou, but through my contacts, I found out that Lou had had a stroke several years ago. He's in bad health. He's not taking interviews. After I gave my presentation to the SABR convention in Minneapolis, the Yankees held their old timers day, and there were pictures of Lou, and he just looked terrible. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a hold of Lou Piniella. But I did get a hold of Willie Randolph. And I got Willie Randolph's number. Well, let's see. I have a friend, Jim Lamparello from high school. We keep in good touch. And Jim worked for the New Jersey Nets for many years. He was one of their assistant vice presidents. And he knew a lot of the public relations directors of the various sports teams in the New York City area. I tried contacting the Yankee office, but they didn't respond to my request to be put in touch with Guidry. So I ended up talking to Jay Horwitz through Jim Lamparello. Jay Horwitz is the long-time PR director for the New York Mets. Now he's the PR director emeritus. And he was nice enough to give me Willie Randolph's phone number. And he also called Willie, so Willie wouldn't be surprised. And I tried calling Willie, left a message on his voicemail. And a day or two later, this is last June, Willie called me back from the golf course. And I told him about the statistics. These, I gave him these statistics and I said, Willie, you played with Ron Guidry his entire career at the Yankees, except for his first season, 1975. Willie was still in the Pittsburgh Pirate organization at that point. And Guidry had only pitched, I think, 10 games in 75. So Willie saw Guidry's entire career. And I said, why do you think his record was so much better under Billy than under all the other managers? And Willie, like the others, the first thing he said was, well, wow, that's a big difference. So I asked him why, and he said, I really don't know, was his answer. But he said, baseball's a game of rhythm. And when Gator, that's one of Guidry's nicknames, is on the mound, the team just seemed to play well. On the back of Guidry's autobiography, My Life in Pinstripes, on the back cover, there's a Willie Randolph quote about Guidry. There was no moment too big for him. He stepped up in huge moments with quiet, dignified confidence that spread across the entire field. So, I lost my place here. So he was nice enough to talk with me. And then I said to Willie, I said, I'm having a lot of trouble getting in touch with Ron Guidry. I've tried all sorts of different avenues. And he says, in a couple of days, I'm going to be up in New Jersey to play at the Yogi Berra Memorial Golf Tournament. And Ron Guidry's supposed to be there, and I will talk with him, and I will see if he's willing to talk with you. So then a few days later, Willie sends me a text message, and he says, Ron will give you a call sometime next Thursday. Well, next Thursday comes and goes. No Ron Guidry. I don't have a phone number. I don't have email. So I said, I'm going to try to talk with Bill Madden and Moss Klein. And my friend Jim Lamparello was nice enough to give me Bill Madden's phone number. So I call up Bill Madden on the phone, and boom, he answers the phone right away. We had a nice discussion. I told him about what I was doing, comparing Guidry's record under Martin as opposed to everyone else. And I told him what those stats were. And the first thing he says is, wow, that's a big difference. And then I said, well, why do you think Guidry did so much better under Martin than the others? And he said, Bill Mann said, well, Guidry really liked the pitching coach that Billy Martin would use, a man by the name of Art Fowler. And Art, Bill said, well, a lot of people thought Art Fowler was just Billy's drinking buddy, but he was actually a very good pitching coach. And Billy first met Art Fowler when he was managing the Minnesota Twins AAA team in Denver, the Denver Bears, in 1968. Fowler was still pitching. He was in his 40s. Billy made him also his pitching coach that year. And when Billy got hired by the Minnesota Twins in 69 to manage the team, he brought along Art Fowler. He brought along Art Fowler to the Detroit Tigers from 71 to 73. And then he brought along Art Fowler to be pitching coach in Texas, 74, 75. And then Art Fowler, 4 of the 5 times Billy managed the Yankees, Art Fowler was his pitching coach. So in his autobiography, which I showed you before, Gator, My Life in Pinstripes, Guidry talks about Art Fowler. And he said that Art Fowler told him the best pitching advice he ever got. Quote, you have to throw strikes because big league hitters don't swing at balls. Just don't make it a strike they can hit. And Guidry continued, quote, it was so simple, it was stupid. What kind of pitching coach is this? I said to myself. And then I sat down and thought about it and encapsulated everything I needed to know. Batters would never swing at my balls if they couldn't get them to swing and miss at my strikes. I could worry about throwing it this way or that way, on the corners or at their knees, but you can't beat yourself up out there. Other pitching coaches tried to give me more complicated advice that was never going to help me. I told them the best spot for them was in the corner. I'd figured things out on my own. Art Fowler, unquote, Art Fowler had the ability to make his pitchers laugh. Bill Madden told me a story when Guidry was having his great year, 1978. He was 13-0, and one night he was pitching up in Milwaukee, and he's getting bombed. And Art Fowler comes out to the mound and he says, quote, "I don't know what's going on out here, but you're making Billy awful pissed off. So whatever you're doing, I suggest you cut it out." Unquote. And then Fowler turned around and went back into the dugout. Guidry was so devoted to Fowler, who he called his best pitching coach, that when Fowler was fired by Steinbrenner in the middle of the 1983 season, Guidry announced that he was dedicating the rest of his season to Art Fowler. Guidry went on to have one of the best seasons of his career in 1983, going 21-9 with a league-leading 21 complete games. So then Bill Madden was nice enough to give me Moss Klein's phone number. Moss Klein, and I should mention, Bill Madden was the beat writer for the New York Daily News for the Yankees in the, I think it was 78 to 89. Anyhow, Moss Klein was the New York Yankee beat writer for the Newark Star Ledger from 1976 to 92. I was living in New Jersey in the 70s and 80s, and he was like my favorite sports writer. So I called him up, and Moss pointed out, he said, when I told him the records, he said, "Wow, that's a big difference." And I said, "Well, why was Guidry better under Martin than under the others?" And Moss pointed out a few days later that from 1975 to 1988, the years Guidry pitched, the Yankee record when Martin was the manager was 556 wins, 385 losses, a 591 winning percentage. And under all the others, the record was 693 wins, 571 losses, a 548 winning percentage. So about 50 points better under Martin. Also, Moss Klein suggested that when Martin managed, the players were better under Martin than under the others. Also, Moss pointed out in 1975-76, beginning of 77, before Guidry established himself, he didn't trust Ron Guidry to pitch. He used him very little. In fact, at one point in the 1976 season, even though Guidry was in uniform on the roster in the bullpen, Martin went 47 days in a row without bringing Guidry into a game. And this really ticked off Guidry. Eventually, he got sent back to the minors. But he stuck with the team in 1977. Originally, he was in the bullpen. Whoops. There's Moss Klein, by the way. And Guidry, the Yankees did a trade. You probably remember the Yankees traded Mike Torres, who had pitched very well for them. They traded Doc Ellis, who pitched very well for them in the 76 season, where they went to the World Series. They traded Doc Ellis for Mike Torres, and Mike Torres pitched well for the Yankees. And that trade was around April 27th, 1977. But Mike Torres didn't show up in time to pitch in that game, April 27th. So Martin was forced to use someone else to start. He started Guidry, and Guidry pitched into the ninth inning. And Guidry became, at that point, part of the regular Yankee rotation. In fact, 6 of his first 7 starts under Martin, Guidry took the game into the 9th inning. But what happened game after game, someone would get on base in the 9th inning and then Martin would pull Guidry. And this increasingly ticked off Guidry because he wanted to have a complete game. So finally, on June 16th, 1977, 2 days before the incident where Billy Martin pulled Reggie Jackson out of right field in Fenway, 2 days before, Guidry's pitching against the Kansas City Royals. They're winning 7-0. George Brett's the first batter up in the 9th inning for the Royals. And he walks, and Billy Martin starts coming out of the dugout. So Thurman Munson, the Yankee catcher, runs out to the mound. He gets out there before Martin reaches the mound, and Thurman Munson says to Guidry, "You have to tell him something. Tell him anything, or he won't let you complete the game." And Guidry was not afraid of Martin. And Martin asked Guidry, "What do you think?" And Guidry responded, "I think you better get your ass off my mound so I can finish my damn game." And Billy looked at him for a few seconds and then said, "Okay," and returned to the dugout. And Guidry had stood up to Martin, gaining Martin's respect, and with the way he pitched, he gained Martin's trust. So things changed between Martin and Guidry. On page 92 of his autobiography, Gator, My Life in Pinstripes, Guidry describes that trust between him and Martin. And he's talking about the 78 season at that point. Guidry goes, quote, "The previous season, Billy and I developed a strong sense of trust in each other. During any given game, he'd ask me if I could keep pitching. The only reason he took my word for it was because I was always truthful. When I'd answer yes, that response only carried weight because he believed I'd say no when I thought I didn't have any gas left in the tank or I just didn't have my best stuff that day. If I wasn't straightforward with Billy about it, that trust would fall apart. Plus, I'd be putting the team, if I insisted on staying out there, I'd be hurting the team if I insisted on staying out there, even when I shouldn't. It was no good for anybody," unquote. So I was very frustrated in trying to get a hold of Ron Guidry, and I didn't know what to do. I wanted him to be part of this presentation. So I sent a text message to Willie Randolph on July 6th because I knew it was Willie Randolph's 70th birthday. It was very short. I said, "Willie, happy birthday. It sure would be nice to talk with Ron Guidry and have a great day." The next night, I'm at a crowded restaurant, a French restaurant, and the phone rings, and I look down, and the ID says Ron Guidry. So I said, "Oh, Ron, I'm in a crowded restaurant. Could I call you back in a few hours?" So I did, and I called him back, and we talked on the phone for about 40 minutes. He confirmed his high regard for Art Fletcher as a pitching coach. Ron agreed that the first couple of years he and Billy Martin did not get along until that incident where he told him to get off his damn mound. Ron pointed out, too, that when Billy managed him, he was relatively healthy. And then I asked him about, and there's part of the Yankee rotation. I'm sorry with the slides here. in 77. And I asked him, here at this picture, you can see it's signed Ron Guidry, number 49 on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, it says, my best manager. So I said to Ron, why did you think Billy Martin was your best manager? And he gave a bunch of reasons. He said Billy was win-oriented. He knew the rule book inside out. He was very intelligent and a master strategist. Billy knew how to motivate the players to play hard for him. The players basically usually enjoyed playing for him. Billy could be very funny. He agreed there were lots of good players on the Billy Martin managed teams. He emphasized once again that Art Fowler was his favorite pitching coach. But the most important thing, I think, was that bond of trust between Guidry and Martin, that Guidry would tell Martin when he wanted to keep on going and would tell Martin when he was out of gas. So there was that trust. You know, going through this, the why he was better, you could do it on so many different levels. You know, at the SABR convention, I was asked a question by Dick Kramer, the great baseball historian, and he asked me about the Yankees in the early 80s. They had Andre Robertson, who was a pretty good defensive shortstop for the Yankees until he got into a car accident. And then they started using Bobby Meacham. And he asked me if I did a comparison of games under Meacham and games under Robertson when Guidry was pitching. Well, I didn't get around to do that. I still haven't done it. But there's so many things that you could do, different pitching coaches, different catchers. But it's clear for whatever reasons Guidry did better under Martin. I did a little bit of digging on some of the other managers, and Bob Lemon managed Guidry two different times. The second half of the 78 season through the beginning of the 79 season. And then he managed Guidry again briefly at the end of the 81 season, beginning of the 82 season. And I did the same thing with Bob Lemon. And Guidry's record under Bob Lemon, this is pretty incredible: 21 wins, 8 losses, 266 innings pitched. So that was like 11% of Guidry's career he pitched under Bob Lemon. And here's the most incredible stat under Bob Lemon: 1.83 ERA. So I asked Guidry about that. I said, you know, why were you so good under Bob Lemon? And Guidry goes, well, who was Bob Lemon? And I said, well, you know, Bob Lemon was a Hall of Fame pitcher, a 20-game winner 7 times. And he said, Guidry said to me, Bob Lemon knew what he was talking about. And Bob Lemon knew the best way to handle me was just to leave me alone and let me pitch. And that's what he did. So that's my presentation. I'm willing to entertain any questions you may have.
If you would like to ask a question of our presenter, Rick Solomon, tonight, go down to the bottom of the screen and hit the react button. You will see another button marked raise hand. Click that and you get in line to speak to our presenter, Rick Solomon, tonight. We've already got a line started for you, Rick. These guys have great questions for folks. They like to get in on it. Let's go. Oh, geez. Look who's first in line. It's got to be the guy. Oh, it's Smiley himself. Ryan McClanahan. You're up,
Hello.
man. How you doing?
This is
All right.
this is fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So I have a question here about Billy Martin, and how come he kept on going back to the Yankees after he'd get fired so many times?
Billy Martin, I've done a lot of reading on Billy Martin, especially in the last year. Billy Martin, there's nothing more that he wanted to do in life than manage the Yankees. He was like, it was like an addiction for him. He had to manage the Yankees no matter what. He was like a moth being attracted to a flame. He just couldn't help himself. And the horrible thing was he did this crazy dance with George Steinbrenner every time. And, Billy had a drinking problem. Billy had a women problem. He had a girlfriend in every city, whether he was married or not. And Steinbrenner put a lot of pressure on Billy. And eventually Steinbrenner was very impatient and impulsive, so he'd fire him. And then with the next manager, things wouldn't go as well as Steinbrenner would like, so he'd rehire him. In fact, if Billy wouldn't have died on Christmas Day of 1989, I believe.
I think it was 89. Yeah, I think you're right.
89.
Gosh,
There were actually discussions between Billy and George Steinbrenner about there being a Billy 6. And I believe Billy would have been hired again if he wouldn't have died. So Billy just couldn't resist.
Okay.
I hope
Thank
that
you so
answers
much.
your question.
It does, yes.
Billy Martin was definitely an enigma wrapped up in mystery, shrouded in intrigue.
He was a brilliant manager. He had the ability, especially his first year managing whatever team, to really improve the team. And then eventually he'd tick off his higher ups. His general manager or his owner eventually tick him off, and he'd get fired. That this would happen over and over and over again with Billy. And I think all the firings have tarnished his reputation some. My opinion, and I'm sure many would differ, is he should be in the Hall of Fame as a manager.
I was going to ask you that question. Yeah, I was going to ask you that question.
He was a brilliant manager, but he was also sort of self-destructive.
Do you think his constant fights with front offices, personnel that were not players, do you think this was just his competitiveness? Was it a compulsion to be the big, the big fish in the little pond? Was it, what do you think was Martin's mindset?
I think when it came to people who weren't baseball people, whether a marshmallow salesman or a reporter, he was easily offended. And if he had alcohol in him, he was much more susceptible coming to fisticuffs. But his last couple of fights, the one with Ed Whitson in 1985 at the Cross Keys Inn outside of Baltimore, and then the fight outside the Lace Topless Bar did not
Lord.
go well for Billy. And
Let's get some more questions in here for you, Rick. Oh boy, look who's up. Buckle up, everybody. It's Joe Ross. Joe, how you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. And yourself?
I'm doing great. Thanks. You're up. Go get him.
I'm proud of you for taking Molly out somewhere.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate that.
The good part of that restaurant is they have never-ending fries,
Right?
which is
I see. I know how to treat a girl.
That's good. That's one of the basic food groups, French fries.
She married me for crying out loud. The only reason she married me was for the endless fries.
Well, the fact that she liked that restaurant shows at least she's got some good taste.
There you go.
Rick,
yes, sir.
very nice presentation. I thought it was wonderful. I got three things to talk to you about.
Okay.
The first, when you first mentioned the many times that Billy was changed back and forth, the first thing I thought of is that I have a feature called Today in Baseball that I do every day. It's an email feature. And in there, I coined the word, not a word, but it is now, a Steinbrennerer, a Steinbrennerd. So if somebody gets fired all the time and changes managers like Billy, they've been Steinbrennered. Second thing that I wanted to mention, you said you're publishing a novel, which happens to be very good because I'm an editor and a publisher. If you're interested, let me know.
I'm still working on it.
Well, that's what everybody does. Yeah. The other thing, and the only thing that really relates to the topic, it's a very unusual topic. A lot of guys will write stories about a player, and obviously a number of different players, some famous, some that should be famous. Why did you pick that kind of a break? That's very unusual. Interesting, but unusual.
Well, I was a big fan of Ron Guidry, and it just struck me, all the 320-win seasons, Martin had managed them most or all of those 3 years. And I wanted to do some digging into it. I suspected before I actually crunched the numbers that he was going to have a better record under Martin, and he did. And I have real, with Ron Guidry, I'm nothing but positive about him. A great pitcher, really nice guy. We had a great phone conversation. But Billy, brilliant manager, but sometimes he could be his own worst enemy. And, I mentioned Guidry said Martin was win-oriented, but Martin had this thing with Reggie Jackson. They did not get along so well. And early on, 77, 78 seasons, Reggie wanted to bat cleanup, and Billy refused to bat him cleanup. And finally, I think it was the 78 season, when he batted Billy cleanup. When he batted Reggie cleanup the last third of the season, the Yankees went something like 41-14 with Reggie batting cleanup. So, if Billy really wanted to win, unfortunately, he let his feud with Reggie sort of get in the way of that at times. So it's sort of interesting, this triangle between Martin, Jackson, and Steinbrenner. But, people like Ron Guidry and Willie Randolph, Roy White, they would sit around there. All this craziness would be going on, and they just sit and watch it. It's a soap opera for them. But a lot of the heat was taken off these other players. The media was focused on the big three of Steinbrenner, Guidry, and Martin. And Steinbrenner, Jackson, and Martin, excuse me. So,
have you thought about doing this kind of digging into, say, a Reggie Jackson? Or another kind of thing, talk about all the clubs that Martin mentioned and compare the records of Martin versus everybody else, and then present that to the Hall of Fame committee.
Yeah, it's something, it would take a lot of number crunching, for sure. There's just so many things that could be done with this. But I don't know of any other manager who managed a team even 3 separate times, the same team. Martin did it 5 times. And that's a function of this crazy relationship between George Steinbrenner and Billy Martin.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. It was very nice.
You're welcome.
Very interesting.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's an interesting examination of both careers. As a matter of fact, Roger, you had your hand up? Do you have a comment or a question?
Yeah.
Go get 'em.
2 comments and then a question. Not Martin for Hall of Fame. He had so much talent, so much money on that club. He only won 1 World Series. I do love the number crunching that you did. Guidry was at the top of his game at that point. I've also heard many times that Billy Martin ruined Oakland's pitching staff when they were young pitchers. Do you have a comment on that?
Well, that's an interesting thing. You're talking about the early 80s.
Right.
When they had Mike Norris and I think Langford and
Langford, yeah.
trying to remember some of the other ones. Billy really wasn't a pitching coach. Billy relied upon Art Fowler quite a bit wherever he went. I don't know, maybe he did ruin those guys by having the starters go so deep. I really don't know. So I hope I answered that.
Yeah. Great presentation. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Guidry was 170 and 91 for his career. Led the league in wins twice. He won several Gold Gloves. His career WAR was nearly 48. Was his candidacy for the Hall of Fame cut short because of he didn't have the body of work that writers thought he needed to get in? Rick, what do you think?
I think so. I think in pitchers of his era and earlier, if you were a starting pitcher and you didn't win at least 200 games, it was awful tough to make the Hall of Fame. Koufax did it with 165 wins, but Guidry's career was sort of short because he really didn't become a full-time starter until he was 27 years old.
1977.
And he was very slight of frame. He was like 5'11", something like 170 pounds. So he just didn't last that long. I think if he would have lasted longer, he would have more credentials for the Hall of Fame. But he led the league in ERA twice. He led the league in wins twice. I think if you talk about pitchers from 77 to 85, he has to be one of the top 5 pitchers in Major League Baseball during.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
He just, didn't get the 200 plus wins. So that's why I think he fell short. But I think down the road, maybe a veterans committee might vote him in.
Be interesting to see.
You know, I mean, he was a great athlete. He was one of the fastest runners on the Yankees. Sometimes they use him as a pinch runner. In the continuation of the Pine Tar game,
Yeah.
Billy Martin put Guidry in center field.
Yes.
And you know, the DH was already in when Guidry made the majors, but if there hadn't been a DH, he would have been a fairly good hitter for a pitcher. So I think it's the shortness of his career that cost him the Hall of Fame by the baseball writers. And like I say, hopefully a veterans committee will eventually vote him in.
It's an interesting study. So, who was that? I'm sorry. Who said that?
I'm sorry, it's Roger.
Oh, Raj.
He did pitch from age 24 to 37.
Yeah, but he pitched very little his first 2 seasons.
Yeah, he only pitched 30 innings.
Very little in 75 and 76. He was on a shuttle back and forth between the Yankees AAA team in Syracuse and the Yankees. And like I say, in 76, he sat 47 games in a row without being used. So the Yankees, Steinbrenner and Martin kept on trying to get him traded. And I'm blanking on his name, the general manager. It'll come to me.
Bob Lemon?
No, before Bob Lemon. He was with Cleveland for a long time.
Oh, geez.
Gabe Paul.
Yeah.
Gabe Paul. That's it.
Gabe Paul kept on vetoing trades of Guidry. He says, no, you know, you can't get rid of Guidry. He has a world of talent. Steinbrenner, at one point before Guidry was a permanent member of the starting rotation, he said, Guidry, you'll never pitch in the major leagues for long. And Guidry said, hey, you know, I haven't had a chance to pitch in the major leagues. Give me a chance and I'll do well. And later on in his career, Steinbrenner loved Guidry.
Yeah.
So
it's an interesting case study because the dance between Guidry and Martin is so unique when you compare it to other players. I can't think of anybody, at least out of those that I've watched in my years, who had this same type of in and out with a manager like Guidry and Martin. So it's an interesting little study that you've put together. I want to go to Doug Aumack. Doug, how are you?
Hi, coming from New Jersey. So thanks, Bruce, for inviting.
native state.
Yeah, thanks.
I am so happy to have you in, my friend.
New
Go
Jersey?
get him.
Nutley, right next to Newark in Essex County.
Yeah, I was born in Newark.
Oh, cool.
And
So,
I grew up in Linden.
oh, okay, great. Yeah. I work as a historian.
That's
for
where Eddie
Essex County.
Casco, Red Sox manager in the early 70s. Eddie Casco is from Linden.
Oh, okay. Wow. The presentation was great. Really enjoyed it. How long, I have a few questions. How long were your conversations with Willie Randolph and Madden and Klein? And my other question was, what were the other sources you used besides the books and Baseball Reference?
Okay. Well, with Guidry, there was just one conversation, a 40-minute conversation. With Willie Randolph, the first time I talked with him was for about 15 minutes. I didn't want to push it too much. And then we talked one other time. Bill Madden, we talked several times, probably both 15 minutes apiece. I knew Bill Madden had co-wrote Lou Pinella's autobiography. He and Lou are very good friends. And I tried to get Bill to put me in touch with Lou, and Bill was very firm in saying Lou is not doing interviews anymore. He was very protective of Lou. Moss Klein, talked with him for about 15, 20 minutes. And then I didn't know this originally. It turned out Moss Klein was very good friends with my good friend Jim Lamparello. Jim Lamparello was the one who was with the New Jersey Nets in the NBA for 18 years. Jim Lamparello started off as PR director for the Nets and eventually rose up to be one of the two executive vice presidents. In grade school, Jim Lamparello and I went to the same junior high and high school. We played a lot of sandlot sports with and against one another, and we are still very good friends. We talk to each other at least once a month. Let's see. So that was one part of your question. What was the other part?
The sources. What were the sources?
Oh,
you
the sources.
used? Yeah.
Okay,
Besides
so I relied a
baseball
lot
references.
upon this book, Guidry's autobiography, My Life in Pinstripes. I relied somewhat upon that other book that I showed you.
The Damned Yankees book.
Damn Yankees book.
Damn
Yeah,
Yankees. Yep.
they're on my bookcase. And then I read some books on Billy Martin. I forget the authors, but
Was one by Golenbach?
one by Golenbach, and then there's another much more recent one. But they really didn't get into differentiating Guidry under Martin as opposed to others. But I did want to emphasize at first the relationship between Guidry and Martin was not good. Guidry said, I'm talking about the first 2 years, 75 and 76, and then the very beginning of 77. Guidry said Martin either ignored him or constantly berated him until he proved himself.
Wow.
And then once he proved himself, it actually got to be a good relationship.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, Rick, this has been a really interesting presentation. Like I say, it's a unique partnership between Martin and Guidry. And I'm not sure you could find another pitcher manager to do something like this with. So interesting stuff, interesting things about Guidry and Martin and that whole time period. So I want to thank you for doing this evening.
You're welcome.
We're back Wednesday night, November 6th, 7 p.m. Eastern, when the East Coast Cooperative continues to bring you the recent national convention right to your computer screen with fellow SABR member Ed Denta, who will give his SABR 52 presentation entitled A Geek's Peek at Streaks. The sign-up link is available in the SABR events calendar at sabr.org/events and is included in the meeting schedule booklet that is circulated each Monday. And finally, if you're a baseball fan watching on YouTube and you like what you see, please like this video and subscribe to our channel to be alerted to each of our uploads. And if you're not yet a member, you need to join the Society for American Baseball Research, the premier baseball community. Offering an amazing baseball buffet of options to explore your fandom, SABR boasts more than 35 different research communities, over 80 regional chapters, and innumerable opportunities to connect with baseball minds across the world. For more information, go to sabr.org/join today. Rick.
Bruce, could I give one little plug?
Go.
Yeah, I don't know the date of it. I think it's in a couple of weeks, but my friend and fellow Northwest Chapter SABR member, Anthony Salazar, is giving a repeat presentation from the SABR 52 conference on WPA ballparks. I saw that presentation at the convention. Anthony's a very good speaker, and it's very interesting how these ballparks got built. So I encourage everyone to watch that in a couple of weeks. I don't have the date handy.
He is scheduled with us, and our schedule is published each Monday to our membership, and it is also available in the SABR events calendar. So that's all we have this evening. Let's get everybody out of here. Rick, you're fantastic. We'll see everybody Wednesday night.
Thank you.
Have a great night, everybody.